Welcome back everyone to the Coalition for Marriage YouTube channel. We've got 3 compilation clips for you over the coming holiday period, Christmas and into the early new year. We've got a video looking at the education system and what's going on in our schools and encouraging you really to get involved in what our kids are being taught. We've got another video looking at general encouragement on how, from a policy perspective, right down to what we can do as individuals to restore man-woman marriage in society. Today's video is looking at a number of our guests who bravely stood up for their support for marriage, man-woman marriage, and lost their positions, but have been vindicated. So let me thank you for your support. Let me encourage you to forward these videos on to your friends and family and encourage them to go and join at c4m.org.uk and get involved with our campaign to promote and support real marriage in our society. Meanwhile, please join me in enjoying the clips.
I was running for mayor of my local borough, Lewisham East, and I put out an election manifesto promise, 6 of them, and number 3 just happened to be that I stand for traditional marriage being between one man and one woman, and that is the safest place to rear children. However, there are some people who were connected to people in my constituency who complained to my employer, and my employer decided to put me through a disciplinary, accusing me of being homophobic and discriminating against LGBTQ people. And they did that, and they fired me as a result of their investigation disciplining me. I sued them with the help of the Christian Legal Centre. It was bad for a little while in terms of the initial case, lost your job, etc., etc. But now that, there's been a win for me and the Christian voice and the Christian view that marriage is between one man and one woman.
But yeah, in terms of the issue itself, it was, I tweeted that homosexuality is invading the church. And that evangelicals no longer see the severity of this because they're busy apologizing for their apparently barbaric homophobia, whether or not they are actually guilty of homophobia. They're just saying, I'm so sorry to the LGBT community. It was, I was in tears on the, coming back from a prayer meeting on the day of the tweet, where the tweet storm had gone crazy and the college had publicly denounced me already. So I knew something was coming. And, it was just, there's just this feeling that you've sort of, you've kind of put a jackhammer in your career and can't provide for your family, that kind of thing. And it was really, really hard. It was not easy. I did have heart palpitations for a couple of weeks, had to go to the hospital and get a kind of scan and things like that because I had stress all up my left side of my body. And they were like, a GP wouldn't even see me because they said, you've got cardiac symptoms, you have to go to hospital. I said, I'm pretty sure it isn't that. It's just severe stress. But we won't even see you. You need to go straight to hospital and get a kind of cardiology scan. And I think that was just very hard because I just knew that when you're hated or loathed or even, you've disappointed everyone around you. So even the evangelicals and people who are conservative, they'd be disappointed in me for speaking out like this. That's just difficult. Like there's the hate that you get from people who are totally progressive, secular, or aggressively anti your position, which is more obvious. You can sort of expect it. It's still hurtful, but even the more hurtful thing is those who might be closer to you who just think you're stupid or just think you're foolish and won't even contact you. They want to disassociate from you, and so I was fired. And they could have made it worse. They could have given me. I got a 3-month severance payment at least. So I don't want to completely say they're terrible in that regard, but they were still doing something that was going to completely destroy my career really. And in terms of what I was doing as a lecturer in a Bible college, it would seem then you're sort of a bad egg. But then I went to the prayer meeting that evening, and this is what I would encourage Christians with who are worried about stepping out. Like, God is real. He's not just this idea. He's not just this religious framework. We need God to make sense of our life, and it gives us a kind of ritual every week to go to on a Sunday, maybe a Wednesday night at a Bible study. It's not just that. There's a lot of conservatives now who are using the idea of God as a way to kind of, as a guarantor of meaning in general. And fine, it's true. It's better to believe God exists than live a life and have a society where we don't believe there's an ultimate power who'll judge us. But it's more than just that. It's like God is relatable and wants to see us step out in faith and trust him. So I was just very confident, despite being completely racked with worry on the day. I did have a lot of faith, knowing that God was going to care for us. So I came home from the prayer meeting. Someone happened to have given me an envelope with £300 in at the prayer meeting. They didn't know anything about my situation. They said, "This is what God say. I want to encourage you in your ministry, and I feel like God's saying you're going to write books, and they're going to help impact the church." And I said, "Oh, I could do with this money probably. It might help me pay the rent in future weeks." And why? And I'm telling him the situation. And it said on the envelope, "Loved by God." And I came home from that prayer meeting that Sunday evening, and I said to Molly, I was like, "We're going to be okay. This is only the first fruits of God's provision. He's going to provide for us." And I could tell you unbelievable stories of how much God's provided for us since that point. It's unbelievable. And so I'm not trying to say that that will magically happen in exactly the same way, but I just think that God means what he says when he says, "You can trust me, and I will honor those who honor me." So the fear that the let's say the LGBT agenda, or just the general progressive secularism in our culture, will try to make you feel fearful as a Christian, or anyone with principles who wants to stand up on them. You shouldn't be scared of it, but especially a Christian who can actually trust in a God who is living and active. And I think that's the kind of thing I would say we need to encourage more people to speak out, irrespective of what might happen to them, if it's relevant and necessary to do so. I know that there are moments where you might say, okay, there is prudence, there is wisdom, there are ways of speaking that we need to think about and temper those. But I just think that right now, these are the kind of issues we must be speaking about.
I'm a member of the Ora Building Society. I've had a savings account with them for 17 years. Anyway, every month, their marketing department puts out an email. "We want to hear from you, our members, our 3 million members. Tell us your views. What do you think?" And the question they often pose is, how are we doing? How are we doing as a bank? Well, I've never replied to that before. But then in May, end of May, they sent one out to me, and they were brewing up for LGBTQA plus, wherever we are, letters now with that, month of June, a whole month of June, where they're going to be pushing this. And so I thought, perhaps I should give them some feedback. And not really expecting them to take much notice of me, if honest. I wrote a very short thing, just 2 paragraphs on their portal, and sent it off. And there was 2 questions in there. One was, firstly, do you really think this is a constructive use of your time as a bank to be pushing this particular social agenda? Because you're obviously putting a lot of effort into this. That means someone's being paid, and it's costing you time and money-wise. Is this good for your brand? That was the question I put. And the second part was, I said that, and I signed my letter, the Reverend, so they knew where I was coming from as far as ethics are concerned. I said, my second problem is I have a real problem with the T element of LGBT in particular, of transsexualism, and particularly where transsexuals are trying to get access to our children. I didn't go into any great detail about that with the YBS, but I said that I have a real problem with that element of it. And I think I may have said something along the lines of, you don't need to bow down to stone walls pushing of this agenda. And I said I didn't really expect any reaction at all. I thought best, they're probably going to ignore it. Anyway, so much to my surprise, 2 weeks later, I got a letter, I've still got it, a printed letter signed by somebody from their sort of customer relations department saying, "Your views will not stand. The relationship between us has irrevocably broken down." That's what Calvin was highlighting in his show that night on Saturday. He did his little monologue at the beginning, and he went through all the banks that have done something similar. And I hadn't realized how much of a problem this is. And again, a lot of them have been got at by Stonewall, because Stonewall invented this thing I think called diversity champions, which essentially means we're going to kowtow to our ethic and agree. And if you don't do that, we're going to shame you, and we're going to say, "Ooh, that company, they're not good with LGBT, and they're not helping." As a pastor, you'll understand this. That was actually my heart concern. Yeah. Was the next guy in line, or next woman in line, is going to be browbeaten and bullied by them.
That's it.
I may be in a position, just because of where I am and what I'm doing, to speak up and protect them. This is YBS actually being prejudicial. They're basically saying, we don't want to do banking with people who don't agree with us on this particular ethic. So, they really do need to behave better. And this is really good. I'm really pleased the amount of press spotlight stirring up has happened as a result of this. And they've been under the spotlight, and they've got to change their behavior. But I would say, people viewing this, stand up, guys. There's far more of us than there are of them on this minority fringe of extremism. And they behave badly. I think one thing that's happening is that the veil is being removed. We're actually seeing what they're like in here, in their viciousness and unattractive approach to things, and intolerance, as you mentioned earlier. Intolerance. They're making judgments about all the rest of us. But stand up, be confident. The truth is the truth.
So it was January 2019, and I got a phone call from work. Now, I owned the company, but it was my managing director who rang me and said, "Harry, we've had the police here wanting to speak to you." I said, "Okay, well, have you got their number?" They said, "Yeah, I've got a card here. They've left now, but give them a ring." What I was not expecting was for the police officer who introduced himself as PC Gull, Humberside Police Community Liaison Officer, said, "Are you Harry the Owl on Twitter?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm Harry the Owl on Twitter. Why?" He said, "Well, we've had a complaint about your tweets. Somebody has said that your workplace is dangerous for trans people. You've tweeted 30 odd tweets and these pose a threat to trans people." And I said, "Right, so let me just get this straight then. Are any of these tweets criminal in your opinion?" He said, "Oh no,
Yep.
None of them are criminal." Yep. I said, "Right, okay. So why are you ringing me?" And he said, "Well, I need to check your thinking." Now, that just blew my mind immediately.
Yeah.
I said, "Okay, let me get this straight. So I've not committed a crime." And he said, "No, but you a police officer, yes. You're ringing me to check my thinking." He said, "Yes." I said, "Have you any idea what that makes you?" And he said, "No." I said, "Look, 1984 is a dystopian novel. It's not a police how-to manual." The reference to Orwell entirely passed him by, and he continued to lecture me about the evils that I had committed. I said, "Okay, so we've established that nothing that I've tweeted was criminal." I said, what is the tweet then that in your estimation as a professional officer comes closest to being criminal? If I'd gone just a little bit further, it would have crossed that line into criminality. And he said, "Well, there's a limerick." I said, I've not written a limerick." He said, "No, but you retweeted one." So what has that got? Yeah, I retweeted the limerick. He said, "Well, by retweeting it, you've endorsed it, and that makes you dangerous to trans people." They said that without necessary intervention, my non-criminal tweets would escalate to something much worse. And I asked them, "What do you have in mind?" And they said, "The murder of Stephen Lawrence and genocide."
Oh my goodness! Goodness!
That's what they said, and they.
Oh my goodness!
They argued that a year later in the High Court when I took them to court, because it transpired that.
Oh my goodness!
That not only do we have the ignominy of having a police officer, a uniformed officer, turn up at my place of work to question me about my thinking. If that's not bad enough, we then discovered that there were these things called non-crime hate incidents, or NCHIs. Now, these have been around apparently since 2014. They were issued by the College of Policing's hate crime operational guidance, and all police forces were signed up to the HCOG, the hate crime operational guidance, and were required to follow it. What's quite incredible about the HCOG is that it says that where there is an incident that does not amount to a crime, then it must be recorded as a non-crime hate incident, regardless of whether there is any evidence of hate. So you don't even need hate for a non-crime hate incident. All you needed was somebody to perceive that what you said or did was motivated by hatred towards one of the five monitored strands, strands including gender identity. Interestingly, of course, gender identity is not a protected characteristic.
Correct.
The 2010 Equality Act has 9 protected characteristics. Sex is one, religion is one, holding a gender recognition certificate is one, but gender identity is most definitely not one. So we discovered there was, I think it was the Telegraph who put out a freedom of information request to all forces following my expose of these things. And it turned out that in 2019, there had been, I think it was 120,000 non-crime hate incidents recorded against individuals, some of whom would know that they were recorded against them, many of whom would not know. By 2022, we estimated, myself and the Free Speech Union estimated that there had been around about 250,000 of non-crime hate incidents recorded against people. Now, there are two things here. One, nobody in their right minds wants to think that the police have you on record as being a hater. But it gets far worse. we discovered when we pressed them, we discovered that these non-crime hate incidents are disclosable and an enhanced DBS check. And it's only in the T's and C's at the bottom of the page where it says category crime, non-crime. That's what it says in the T's and C's. Now, if I'm an employer, I'm not going to see past the headline that says hate crime.
Yeah.
I'm not. That application is going straight in the bin. Absolutely. We don't have time to go through this. So what worries me greatly is the number of people who are scratching their heads as to why they didn't get that job, why they didn't get that promotion, why suddenly the world seemed to turn against them. When I understood about these non-crime hate incidents, I took the Chief Constable of Humberside through judicial review at the High Court. He said that he was simply following the national guidance as set out by the College of Policing, so we took them through the court as well. What was interesting is that the Chief Constable of Humberside was found guilty and was likened by the judge to having an operation that was like the Stasi, the Cheka and the Gestapo. But the College of Policing were found not guilty in that instance, and that not guilty, but their guidance was found to be lawful. Now, we thought that was utterly ridiculous. How can it possibly be that the guidance is lawful, but following the guidance to the letter is unlawful? That made no sense to us at all. So we appealed that decision. A year later, we were back in the Court of Appeal, and we won. And the hate crime guidance was struck down. Yep. The College of Policing have recently issued new guidance, which is much better.
The job that I applied for was a support worker role, and I was going to earn far less doing this job. But the reason why I applied for the job was mainly because I've always wanted to work as a hospital discharge social worker, but unfortunately I don't have the experience. So I thought going into this role as a support worker in the hospital discharge team, I should be able, after maybe a couple of months or maybe years, to then move up to the role of a hospital discharge social worker role. So that was my main motivation. When I saw the job advert, I was really excited because it was a wonderful opportunity for me to go in, showcase my skills and my experience, and to make a difference, really. At the end of the interview, they offered me the job because I was the best person for the role. They offered me the job.
Yep.
So I went back home. I think it's the same day, actually, they called me in the evening to say, Felix, your interview was really good. We like this, we like that. You are the best person for this role. So would you like to accept this job offer? And I said, yes, this is something that I love to do. So yes, why not? So they then said they're going to write me to make a formal provisional offer, and then I can just accept the offer, then we'll take it from there. So I waited 1 week, 2 weeks, and even more. I didn't hear anything. Then at that point, I got very worried. What is going on? I should be starting, in a couple of weeks, and yet I'm not hearing anything from them. So eventually, they sent me an email to say, can we have an additional reference? Because the ones that we received from your referees, they didn't contain enough information. And I thought, well, this is very unusual. But at the same time, I also thought, well, let me give them the benefit of that. Maybe they are just doing their due diligence. So I provided a third reference. And then they came back to me and said, oh, no, we're withdrawing the job offer. And I thought, this isn't right. But then I started suspecting quite a while ago because everything seemed very unusual to me. They withdrew the job offer. Initially, they wouldn't really tell me why. So I challenged them on that. I said, why are you withdrawing the job offer? They eventually came to me and said, well, we went on Google and we Googled you and we saw that case that you took the University of Sheffield to court. and your views do not actually align with our views. So that's the reason why we are withdrawing the job offer. And Dr. Tony, I'm not going to come here to apologize for my views. I always say that I am who I am. I'm a Christian. I love God. I love people. I believe in what the Bible says about sexuality and about marriage. I believe that marriage should be between a man and a woman, and I cannot apologize for that. And I shouldn't be made to apologize for that. It is so important that cases like this are challenged. I think it's absolutely important. And I think Dr. Tony, I've suffered as a result. I could as well pack my bags and say, I don't want any trouble. I just want to go and do my job. I want to earn a living. But if we all do that, if we all pack our bags and go home and say, you know what, I care about my mortgage, I care about my job, I care about this, or I care about that. Who is going to challenge unfairness? Who is going to challenge it? We cannot just pass it to the next person that, oh, my children will do it, or my grandchildren will do it. We have to challenge it. And so, although I've suffered in the past, and I know I'm still going to suffer, I think it is just fair that, we tackle this issue.
How this blew up really for myself was we had a class for social education class as usual, and some students, and that means senior students of high school, volunteered to come and explain LGBT, more specifically transgenderism, to us as a classroom. And this was supervised by a lecturer, but we were given many questions that we had to answer in a way that everyone could see, and this involves standing up and sitting down. And some of the questions were really shocking. For example, can a 4-year-old change their sex? That's when it was more detailed for all of us as students, and we were all I can only speak on my own behalf. I was really certainly shocked. Now I stood down. I couldn't stand up to say if I agree with this. And standing down, I was naturally, visibly, everyone could see I'm disagreeing with this. During the class, there were more questions given, and I was approached by the teacher, the lecturer, with a note, and this note described the hate crime bill, I believe, or the hate crime 2010. And this note was really saying that, disagreement could be a criminal offense. So that got me more upset and anxious. And I brought it to my dad, the note after. This wouldn't have been as big if it had not been for the school to mention fight homophobia. We need to tackle homophobia. And naturally, this pushed everything to another extreme, because students were no longer agreeing to disagreeing. Students now carried their disagreement to a new level, and that was combating, my opinions. And this unfortunately led to bullying, verbal bullying. And yes, and throughout the years, it got, unfortunately, through the social media, and they got physical. It wasn't just social media extended to my own door. It came that quite frequently. Even now, I'm not even sure who came, but they would come to our door and they would knock on our door, and the knocking became kicking, and this was banging. I reported this first to my first level of command, and it was ignored, unfortunately. And again, another scenario occurred where now social media, there was photos of me, and I was portrayed as a homosexual. And this then I reported, because there was another form of bullying, and I don't know how far it extended. I don't know how many pictures were sent of me, and it was ignored again. And after this, unfortunately, the police got involved, because student support, which this time it was one of the deputy head teachers, he was very friendly, he was very understanding, and he took the time to ensure that this situation is dealt as good as possible. and he recommended the police to be involved. Something I forgot to include was that it really got quite upsetting for me more when, having left the group of friends that I was in, there was many rumors spread like wildfire around me, as in many other situations in high schools they normally do. And this caused death threats to come to me from people that were not involved at all, who were neither LGBT or who were neither from the friend group I was involved. And this happened twice, and this was really why the police got involved. And this is really also why I had to leave, because even if I would have stayed, there was already too much damage caused. So for young people, if my advice for them, if they are in a situation similar to me, it would be to make sure that they can do the right decision, to make sure that they are responsible for themselves. They can have a good conversation with their parents. They can be transparent about these issues, first to their parents, and they should be comfortable enough to go to the school, not alone, but with parents, and to address the situation formally. Because in my case, I addressed this as a student, and I was ignored the first few times. But when my parents got involved, which I thank God they got involved, and I thank God that I have loving parents who want the best for me in a society that doesn't, they came with me. And when the students, no, I mean, when the lecturers saw this, they realized, okay, well, we have to take this on board. We have to listen to Eddie's opinions, and we have to treat the situation the right way.
I'd taken a job as a school caretaker, which was, it seemed a good fit. It was a new school, local to our area, local to our church. Great way of being involved in the community as well as helping to pay the bills. So happily employed by a local school who, I have to say, when they employed me, were very clear. They really didn't want any kind of Christian nonsense. But yeah, that was pretty much it. You know, okay, well, we know you're a vicar. We don't want you doing this kind of stuff. Within the first week, I was asked to take assemblies. I was asked to take some RE lessons. I was asked to help with difficult children, counselling staff, that kind of stuff. Kind of just,
but no Christian nonsense.
But no Christian nonsense. Yeah.
So taking on as a caretaker, but could you do assemblies? Could you do RE lessons?
Yeah. So it was good. It was a nice surprise. The issue came in June. I'm having to think back when, it's such a long time now, but it was just before June 2019 when I put out a tweet. Now, the background to this tweet is that within our church, we've been discussing how we could reach out to the whole community. We wanted to make sure that we were not missing out on those who were attracted to those of the same sex. And so we'd had discussions, and a number of people said, well, shouldn't we go along to the Pride events and be encouraging and tell them about Jesus? And my answer was no. How do you feel if a whole group of people turn up on a Sunday morning and start telling us that same-sex marriage is a great thing, and we're stepping on their toes. Yes, we need to reach these people. Don't do that. Somebody else said, well, how about I take my children along? We just hand out a few leaflets. No, just don't take your children anywhere near it. So we'd had those discussions, and so the day before the great Pride events were about to start launching, I put out a tweet which basically said, Pride isn't appropriate for Christians. It's not the right place for us to be, and it's particularly harmful for children. Within a few seconds, the local newspaper editor, who unbeknown to me was a great supporter of Pride, decided to contact on Facebook and Twitter a local councillor who, with her wife, were great advocates for Pride, and so they started the process of lift up what I had said, twist it, and the mob was born. Now, the next day, it was a Saturday, I put out the tweet. The next morning, I had another newspaper editor on the phone before I got out anywhere near church. Wouldn't speak to them, so they turned up at church, and it kind of went on from there.
Yep.
I turned up on the following Monday for the work at school, and was faced with the kind of horror of the head teacher saying, "What have you been doing over the weekend? It's all dreadful." So I just being me, and brushed it off, carried on. But within a couple of days, the trust who managed the school had decided I was bringing the school into disrepute, took me along the disciplinary route. But the upshot was that I could see where it was heading. I knew where it was heading. I got a lot of other stuff going on in life. And so the mental and kind of capacity to deal with this meant that I had decided I was going to resign, but continue to see the disciplinary process through, because doing that would prove one way or another whether I was right to have resigned. So the disciplinary process ended up with a final written warning saying that if I ever dare use my own personal social media accounts and say things which the school don't like, again, I will be out of a job. So obviously I'm going to do that, because the school isn't going to like what I've been saying for many years and continue to say. The Christian Legal Centre backed me to take this to a tribunal. We put every possible thing that we could lay on the line, really, to the tribunal, and we won on indirect discrimination. But the process, of course, it's interesting, pretty bruising along the way. It was the mob that was more of a problem than anything else in reality, because a family, I'm pretty thick-skinned. I just kind of get on with it. But when you have funeral directors turning up at your home trying to arrange a funeral, and people trying to knock you off your bike and that kind of stuff, it gets a bit difficult for the family. It's interesting you mentioned the police as well, because I was invited along soon after by the local police to a meeting with the local council and the police, so that I could be kind and gentle to those who apparently I'd abused, and make great apologies and be retrained in my thinking. Now, I didn't realise that was the police's role. The whole point of the pride issue is it's wrecking the family unit. The marriage issue is really central, and so when we found ourselves in a situation where it was possible civilly for two men or two women to marry, that's where the whole thing kind of exploded. That was a massive catalyst to the aggression, and it is aggression, which is thrown against those who would stand for traditional values from whatever faith or none. And a number of the people who came, I had lots of people wanting to support me, but not one publicly. Not one local church would support me publicly.